Jax's revenge domain. The words hung in the silence like a ghost between us. We're going in a different direction. Paul Richards from Human Resources said, his eyes fixed somewhere above my head. He cleared his throat. The leadership team believes fresh perspectives will benefit the division. I stared at him. 20 years of loyalty, suddenly worth nothing. My name is Wade Morrison. I'm 49 years old, and I'd just been told my services were no longer needed in the position I'd built from the ground up. My voice remained steady when I finally spoke. And who exactly is taking over my position? Brandon Hayes. He started with us 5 weeks ago in strategic consulting. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. The 29-year-old who'd been here barely a month. He has an impressive educational background from Stanford, Paul continued, and brings innovative thinking that aligns with our new digital transformation vision. I adjusted my watch band. Click. The metal felt warm under my fingers. Digital transformation for defense contracting. This isn't a performance issue, Wade. He slid a folder across the desk. We're transitioning you to senior advisor. You'll keep your benefits package. We value your institutional knowledge. Institutional knowledge. That's what you call 20 years of relationships I'd built. The crises I'd handled when our biggest government contract nearly got canceled. The nights and weekends I'd missed with my son Mason to keep this place running. Paul's expression remained blank, professional. Practiced. Your new workspace has been prepared. You can move your things today. Let me give you some background on how I got here. I spent 6 years in the Navy, logistics and procurement, before transitioning to the civilian defense industry at 28. That military experience taught me something most business school graduates never learn. Patience wins more battles than aggression. The Navy also gave me my security clearance, which in the defense world is worth more than any MBA. For 20 years, I'd built the defense division of Apex Defense Solutions from a small government contracting office into a $50 million operation. I knew every Pentagon procurement officer by name. I remembered their service histories, their families, their concerns about budget cuts and congressional oversight. I was a divorced father trying to maintain some stability for my 24-year-old son Mason, who was finishing his aerospace engineering degree at Colorado State. The divorce had been amicable enough, but expensive. Mason's tuition, my aging father's care costs, and my own retirement planning all depended on the salary I'd earned through 2 decades of building something from nothing. The signs of my impending removal had been subtle at first. CEO Gerald Hoffman started bringing Brandon to executive lunches without explanation. My security briefings disappeared from my calendar. Technical glitch, they claimed. Projects I'd nurtured for years were suddenly reassigned for fresh perspective. I should have seen it coming. Gerald had been pushing the company toward what he called digital native leadership. The problem was our clients weren't digital natives. They were career military officers who valued proven track records over social media strategies. The next morning, I watched Brandon settle into my chair. His manicured fingers trailing along the desk edge as he arranged his belongings, a motivational calendar, a framed MBA certificate. Some kind of stress ball shaped like a brain. My new workspace sat in the corner, half the size of my old office, with a view of the building's ventilation system instead of the river. The nameplate on my door reading Division Director had already been changed to Senior Advisor before I'd even arrived. The team meeting started at 900. My team, my people. They filed into the conference room, avoiding my eyes, shoulders hunched with the awkwardness of collective betrayal. Brandon stood at the head of the table. My spot, his youth painfully obvious in his nervous posture. Good morning, everyone. His voice was too bright, too eager. I'm so excited to be leading this amazing team. I've been reviewing our client portfolio and have some thoughts on restructuring our approach. I watched silently as he stumbled through client names, and our work with Admiral Caldwell needs a complete refresh. Admiral Caldwell, I corrected quietly. Retired Navy. He's very particular about his title. 20 pairs of eyes swung toward me. Brandon's smile tightened. Right. Thanks for that, Wade. Of course, I said, adjusting my watch band again. Click, click. Brandon continued. As I was saying, we need to modernize our client engagement protocols, move away from these old-fashioned quarterly reviews and implement agile methodology. Harvey Wells from finance raised his hand. But doesn't the Admiral require those quarterly security briefings? It's been mandated for 7 years. Brandon blinked. Well, we can adjust. Innovation requires flexibility. The quarterly reviews are tied to our security clearance requirements, Diana Foster from Analytics added. The Pentagon mandates that timeline. We can't just change it. The room grew uncomfortably quiet as Brandon shuffled through his notes, finding nothing that addressed these operational realities. My phone vibrated with an incoming message. The sender name made my pulse quicken. Admiral James Caldwell, retired Navy and our largest client. Emergency meeting requested, Tuesday 8 a.m., concerned about recent organizational changes. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, allowing myself the smallest adjustment of my watch band as Brandon fumbled through explaining project timelines he clearly didn't understand. This was only the beginning. Before we continue, thanks for taking the time to read this story. If you're finding it relatable, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button. Your support means everything. Now, let's get back to how this corporate nightmare unfolded. After that first humiliating meeting, Brandon summoned me to his office, my former office, where he'd already replaced my service commendations with his business school awards. "I need your help understanding the Caldwell account," he said, panic edging his voice. "They've requested a strategic presentation for next week." I nodded, expression neutral. The Admiral values tradition. Military protocol. He'll expect our standard quarterly review format with updated security assessments. "But I wanted to show them my new approach," he said, pulling up a flashy slide deck filled with animated transitions and business buzzwords. Agile methodology, digital transformation, disruptive innovation. I watched him scroll through it, noting 6 critical errors that would offend our conservative military clients. "This is certainly innovative," I said carefully. "You don't like it?" he frowned. "It's not about my preferences. It's about what works with this particular client." His eyes narrowed. "Gerald hired me to modernize things, Wade. The company needs fresh energy." The subtext was clear. "You're obsolete." That night at home, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, a beer untouched beside me. Mason found me there at midnight, still staring at my email. "Dad, you okay?" I looked up at my son, his face concerned. He'd driven down from Fort Collins for the weekend, and I was grateful for the company. "They replaced me," I said, the words still strange in my mouth. "With someone with less real-world experience than you have." Mason slid into the chair beside me. "That's insane. You built that place. Apparently, that's the problem." "I'm too established." "You mean too expensive and too smart," Mason said fiercely. "Too intimidating for some insecure CEO." I smiled sadly. "Maybe." Mason squeezed my shoulder. "So what's your plan?" "Plan? Dad, you always have a plan. You're the guy who planned our camping trips 6 months in advance, remember?" He pointed to the notebook beside my computer. "What's plan B?" I looked down at the notebook where I'd started jotting ideas. "I'm working on it." "Good," he said firmly. "Because you taught me never to let anyone take what's yours without a fight." The kid was right. In the Navy, we called it operational planning. You always had contingencies. I'd been so focused on doing my job well that I'd forgotten the first rule of military strategy. Always have an exit route. The next morning, I went back to work early before most of the team arrived. I sat at my small corner desk, methodically organizing files when Brandon walked in, already looking stressed. "Morning," he said briskly, barely glancing my way. I watched him rush into his office, close the door, and make a frantic phone call. Through the glass, I could see him gesturing, his face tense. At precisely 8:15, my phone lit up with a message from Harvey Wells in finance emergency meeting called. Caldwell threatening to pull $15 million contract after receiving Brandon's proposal. I tucked my phone away and waited. 3 minutes later, Gerald himself appeared, walking briskly toward Brandon's office. "Where's the Caldwell file?" he demanded loudly enough for me to hear. I continued quietly sorting papers, pretending not to notice the crisis unfolding. By 8:30, Gerald emerged from Brandon's office and headed straight for my desk. "Wade," he said, his businessman's smile firmly in place. "We need your expertise on a sensitive matter." I looked up, expression mild. "How can I help?" "The Caldwell situation. There's been a misunderstanding with our oldest client." "Has there been a problem with Admiral Caldwell?" I asked innocently. Gerald's smile tightened. "Brandon tried introducing some updates to their service package. There's been pushback. That's unfortunate. The Admiral values consistency in his contractor relationships." I maintained eye contact, making him squirm slightly. "We need you in the emergency meeting. You know Caldwell better than anyone." I nodded, gathering my notebook. "Of course, happy to help." The conference room was tense when I entered. Brandon sat at the head of the table, face pale. Gerald beside him. The speakerphone in the center connected us to Admiral Caldwell in his Virginia office. "We have Wade joining us now," Gerald announced to the phone. "Wade," the Admiral's voice immediately warmed. "Finally, someone who understands operational requirements." "Good morning, Admiral," I replied, slipping into the military courtesy I knew he valued. "How's your grandson's Naval Academy application progressing?" "Outstanding. He was just asking about your Mason's aerospace program at Colorado State." I could feel Brandon staring at me as I navigated the conversation with ease, gently steering the Admiral back to his concerns, explaining the miscommunication about his account, and assuring him that his preferred approach would remain unchanged. "Admiral, regarding the proposal you received," I said carefully, "I believe there was some confusion about implementation timelines. Our standard quarterly security briefings will absolutely continue as mandated." "Good to hear, Wade." That proposal suggested eliminating those briefings entirely. "Frankly, it made me question whether your new management understands the regulatory requirements we're operating under." Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I can assure you," I continued, "that compliance remains our top priority. Would it be helpful if I personally reviewed the revised proposal before it reaches your desk?" "That would be much appreciated. You know our requirements better than anyone." By the call's end, the Admiral was satisfied. "This is why we trust you, Wade. You understand the value of relationships, of proven performance." After we disconnected, Gerald cleared his throat. "Excellent work, Wade. This is exactly why we value you as an advisor." I smiled pleasantly, happy to help. If there's nothing else, I should get back to my transitional duties. As I walked out, I felt Brandon's eyes burning into my back. The first move in a long game had been made. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been planning for this possibility for months. Because in the defense industry, the biggest mistake anyone can make is believing org charts matter more than security clearances and relationships built on shared service. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. Brandon would announce a sweeping change to our processes. Clients would resist. I would be called in to advise. Client relationships would stabilize. Each time, I was careful to appear helpful but neutral. Just doing my job, I would say when Gerald thanked me for salvaging another situation. In reality, I was watching, learning, cataloging every misstep, while maintaining detailed notes on all client interactions. The defense division operated on relationships I had cultivated for nearly 2 decades. Connections that existed nowhere in the company's formal documentation because they lived in trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect between veterans. 2 weeks after my demotion, Brandon called me into his office. He'd removed my service awards and replaced them with a meditation corner, complete with a small fountain. The gentle bubbling water couldn't mask his anxiety. "I need the background on the General Brennan account," he said without preamble. "They're refusing to work with anyone but you." I nodded. General Brennan values consistency. His company was our first major defense contract. "I know that," Brandon snapped. I read the file. "What I need is whatever you know that isn't in the file." I considered him for a moment. The general's son has PTSD from Afghanistan. He schedules all meetings around his therapy appointments on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He never takes calls between 2-4 p.m. He prefers data presented in operational briefing format, needs time to process complex procurement decisions, and values honesty above all else. Brandon scribbled notes frantically. "Why isn't any of this documented? It's personal information shared over 15 years of building trust. Not everything belongs in a database." His eyes narrowed. "You've been intentionally keeping information to yourself to make yourself indispensable." The accusation hung between us. I maintained eye contact, voice even. "I've been building relationships the way this business requires. The information has always been available to anyone who took the time to earn it." "Well, I'm asking now," he said, sliding a legal pad across the desk. "Write down everything about every client. Everything you know that others don't." I took the pad, of course, happy to help with the transition. That evening, I called General Brennan from my personal phone. We'd served together briefly in the Persian Gulf back in my Navy days, though he'd been a young lieutenant then, and I was an enlisted man. The military creates bonds that don't fade with time or rank. "They've got that kid running your division." The general's incredulous voice filled my kitchen. "Gerald has finally lost his mind. He's trying his best," I said diplomatically. His best included sending me a proposal that ignored our entire cybersecurity framework, the general replied. Then he suggested meeting during my son's therapy time. When I declined, He asked if I could just skip it this once. I winced. I'm sorry about that. Don't apologize for him. What's really going on, Wade? Why would they sideline you? Fresh perspectives, apparently. The general snorted. Cheaper perspectives, you mean? Our contract renewal is coming up next quarter. I hope they don't expect the same terms without you at the helm. I made a non-committal sound. I'm still with the company as an advisor. For now, the general said knowingly. Let me guess. They'll phase out your position once they think they've extracted what they need. The conversation shifted to his son's progress and therapy, but the general's insight lingered. He wasn't wrong. My senior advisor role was clearly temporary, a convenient way to extract my knowledge before discarding me completely. The next morning, I handed Brandon my client notes, a carefully curated collection that included everything that was generally known within the team, but omitted the deeper personal connections and insights that made the relationships truly valuable. This is it. Brandon flipped through the pages, frowning. The essentials I confirmed. The rest comes with time and relationship building. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like convenient before dismissing me. That afternoon, our team gathered for the monthly progress meeting. I sat in the back corner, observing as Brandon presented his vision for restructuring our client approach. We need to standardize our processes, he announced, displaying a rigid timeline of client interactions. Too much of our current workflow depends on individual relationships rather than scalable systems. Harvey from finance raised his hand. Won't that undermine the personalized service our clients expect? Personalization can be systematized, Brandon insisted. We'll create detailed client profiles and protocol libraries. I watched my team exchange glances. They knew what Brandon didn't, that our clients valued the human connection above all else. They stayed with us because we remembered their service histories, their families, their operational concerns. No database could replicate that. After the meeting, Diana Foster lingered by my desk. This is going to be a disaster, she whispered. The Kowalski Group specifically told me last week they chose us over competitors because we don't treat them like a transaction. I nodded sympathetically. Change can be challenging. That's all you have to say. Diana looked shocked. You built this approach. You're just going to watch him dismantle it. I met her eyes calmly. I'm in an advisory capacity now. Brandon has the authority to implement his vision. Diana studied me. You're planning something. I smiled slightly, adjusting my watch band. I'm adapting to my new role just like everyone else. Right, Diana said, clearly unconvinced. Well, when this ship starts sinking, I hope you've saved some lifeboats for the rest of us. As she walked away, my phone buzzed with a message from Admiral Caldwell. Contract review meeting moved up. New leadership not compatible with our security requirements. What's the situation over there? I pocketed my phone without responding immediately, but I could feel the foundation cracking beneath Brandon's feet. Each day brought new evidence that his MBA theories didn't translate to the reality of defense contracting. The military had taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best tactical move is a strategic withdrawal. Let your opponent overextend themselves, make mistakes, reveal their weaknesses. I was about to put that lesson to use. By the 1-month mark of Brandon's leadership, client complaints had doubled. 3 smaller accounts had already announced they were exploring other options. Team morale plummeted as Brandon implemented rigid reporting structures that doubled everyone's administrative workload. Gerald started appearing in our department more frequently, his forced smile growing thinner with each visit. I maintained my quiet corner position, diligently completing the increasingly meaningless tasks assigned to me while watching the division I'd built begin to crumble. You need to do something, Harvey cornered me in the break room. The Peterson Group is threatening to walk. That's a $3 million account. I'm sure Brandon has a plan, I replied, stirring my coffee. Harvey lowered his voice. The team is talking. Some are updating their resumes. Deanna has an interview next week that got my attention. Diana was brilliant. The best analyst I'd ever worked with. Losing her would be a major blow. What exactly do you expect me to do? I asked quietly. I don't know. Something, anything. You always had a plan. I looked at him steadily, adjusting my watch band. Plans take time, Harvey. Sometimes you have to let things develop naturally. He shook his head in frustration. While you're waiting for things to develop naturally, we're losing everything you built. As Harvey walked away, Brandon appeared in the break room doorway. I need you in my office, he said curtly. I followed him, noting the new tension in his shoulders, the slight dishevelment of his usually perfect appearance. The office was strewn with papers and open folders. The quarterly numbers are due tomorrow, he said without preamble. I can't make sense of the reporting structure. The structure you implemented 3 weeks ago, I asked mildly. His jaw tightened. The structure that your team is clearly sabotaging. Nothing adds up. The client satisfaction metrics are plummeting and the revenue projections are worse. I took the report he thrust at me, scanning it quickly. These aren't signs of sabotage, Brandon. They're accurate reflections of what's happening. 4 clients have already reduced their service packages. The team has poisoned them against me. I kept my voice level. The clients are responding to changes in our approach. Personal relationships matter in this industry. The personal touch was holding us back. He slammed his hand on the desk. We need scalable, repeatable processes that don't depend on individual relationships. Gerald agrees with me. Then perhaps you should discuss the reporting structure with Gerald. His eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me struggle while you sit in your corner playing the wise mentor. The division failing proves you right. I set the reports down carefully. I want the division to succeed. These are my people, my clients, but I'm not in a position to direct strategy anymore. Then help me fix this, he demanded. Take over the quarterly report. Make it make sense. Show me how to present these numbers without Gerald firing me on the spot. And there it was, the leverage point I'd been waiting for. I nodded slowly. I'll need access to all the client files again. And I'd like Diana pulled off her current project to assist me. Brandon hesitated, then nodded curtly. Fine, whatever it takes. The presentation is at 10 a.m. tomorrow. That night, I worked late in the office long after everyone else had left. With my temporarily restored access, I compiled a comprehensive analysis of division performance before and after Brandon's arrival. The numbers told a stark story that no amount of creative presentation could disguise. Diana joined me around 11 p.m., coffee in hand. So we're saving his ass. We're doing our jobs, I replied, not looking up from my screen. You know what I don't understand, Diana said, settling into a chair beside me. Why aren't you angry? They took everything from you and handed it to someone who's destroying it. How can you just sit there so calmly? I finally looked up. Who says I'm not angry? Diana studied my face. You're plotting something. I'm responding strategically to changing circumstances. A slow smile spread across Diana's face. The quarterly numbers are really bad, aren't they? They reflect reality, I said carefully. And no amount of presentation magic can hide that. We worked through the night creating a presentation that was meticulously accurate, beautifully designed, and absolutely devastating in its clarity. The quarterly presentation unfolded exactly as I anticipated. Brandon stood before the executive team, clicking through slides that told the story of a division in rapid decline. Client satisfaction fallen by 40%. New business acquisition down 45%. Team productivity metrics showing alarming downward trends. Gerald's face transformed from mild concern to barely contained fury. This is a nosedive, Brandon. What exactly is your plan to reverse it? Brandon glanced desperately in my direction where I sat quietly against the wall. I kept my expression neutral. Perhaps Wade has some insights. Patricia Vaughn from the board suggested. Given his history with these accounts, all eyes shifted to my corner. The relationships with our key clients have been built over many years. They value consistency and personal connection. Rapid changes can be unsettling. Gerald closed his laptop with a snap. We need immediate damage control. Wade, can these accounts be salvaged? I paused, letting the question linger. Possibly, but it would require returning to proven methodologies. Our clients trust established processes. Within 2 weeks, Gerald offered me my old position back. I declined. Instead, I informed them I was starting my own firm. Deanna, Harvey, and 10 other team members joined me. So did Admiral Caldwell, General Brennan, and 7 other major clients. 6 months later, my firm occupied a riverside office with floor-to-ceiling windows. We'd grown to 20 employees and secured $75 million in contracts. Brandon had been let go within a month of my departure. On a Friday morning, I sat across from Admiral Caldwell at our regular breakfast meeting. To strategic planning, he said, raising his coffee cup. You know, he continued, Gerald called me last month, offered a 20% discount to return our business. And I told him Admiral's stars aren't earned with discounts. They're built through trust, performance, and proven relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. Passed my final defense presentation. Thanks for teaching me that patience and planning beat rushing and hoping. Outside the window, I could see my new offices reflecting the morning sun. Inside, my team was building something that valued relationships over rigid processes, experience over youthful innovation, and loyalty over short-term thinking. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, I appreciate it. Sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't revenge or bitterness. It's building something better on your own terms. If this hit home for you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to activate your own plan B when corporate life threw you a curveball? Your experience matters, and there's probably someone else out there who needs to hear that they're not alone in fighting these battles. The game isn't over just because they changed the rules.